Boa tarde. Good afternoon, dear Minister Marcio, dear Secretary General of UN Tourism, dear Minister of Zimbabwe, dear Minister Patricia from South Africa, UN Tourism colleagues, investors. So it's a pleasure to be here today after a whole morning supporting Angola. And now it's time to talk a little bit of what we are doing at UN Tourism to help Angola and to work together, UN Tourism plus Angola, to promote investments. So if you can help me, with the presentation, let's start. Before we start talking about investments, let's see what UN Tourism says related to the data, the global data, where we are. First of all, of course, we ended the year pretty well, 1.4 billion tourists, and our UN Tourism Barometer says that by 2030, we will achieve 2 billion people traveling. So that's the first signal for the investors that are here. The sector is growing. But then, something really important to us at UN Tourism is that the tourism sector is getting more competitive. If we see the receipts, they are growing faster than the number of tourists. So we have $1.9 trillion coming to the global economy thanks to tourism. Is more of the numbers that we have related to the number of people. So that's the way at the end of the day to bring more contribution to the GDP and to the economy. And then let's see what is happening. So the world this year has been growing 2%, but Africa is growing 4% this year. So it's doubling the efforts when it comes to this sector. And then, this is very important to us. Who are the best performing destinations? So first of all, Angola. So Minister Marcio, look at you there. 28% of growth. Minister Patricia, South Africa, 18% of growth. Morocco, 14, Seychelles, 13, Tunisia 10, Sierra Leone 10, and Zimbabwe 10. Minister Barbara, again. So at the end of the day, it's very important for investors, of course, before I go to talk about investments, the performing destinations and how, as all the speakers before said, tourism is about humanity, but as well about trust. So when it comes to the investment outlook, let's talk now what is happening in the world. So when it comes to investments in general, I'm not talking about the tourism sector. Despite all the tensions that we have in the world, you know pretty well, and I always say this, investments is like a roller coaster. It depends on confidence, it depends on trust, it depends, of course, on security, not only national security, not only human security, legal security and legal stability. And if we see the data, this data is from our sister agency, UN Trade, or UNCTAD. So the global economy at the end is stable somehow. The year ended with $1.6 trillion when it comes to global investments. Now let's go to tourism. So where we are. Tourism, for the last years, have been announcing more than 2,700 new projects, $142,000 billion, and the sector is expecting to create more than 323,000 jobs. This is in the global scope. And then let's jump to see which ones, in the next slide, which ones are the investors that are investing in tourism. So here we go. This is the table that the Financial Times does only for private investments. So the tourism cluster, we have the United States, United Kingdom, Spain, Thailand, France, China, Singapore, the United Arab Emirates, Netherlands, and Australia in the top 10 of the ranking of private investors investing in this sector. And then, when it comes to this sector, now let's jump, of course, to Africa. And let's see how we are in the region. The region in the last years announced more than 131 projects, so more or less in average, each project or each investor is investing $51 million, and 88% of the investments that are coming to Africa are basically hotels or accommodation. And as always, the Secretary General mentions, tourism is the most human economic sector, so this 88% of hotels creation needs to be connected with one of her priorities, that is capacity building. So at the end of the day, we just not need to promote investments, but also to connect this with education. And Africa is expecting to create more than 16,000 new jobs thanks to these investments. Now let's jump to the other slide to see which countries or which investors are investing in Africa. Of course, in tourism. So we see the United States, the United Arab Emirates is number 2 in this region, China, Spain, Morocco, France, Germany, Singapore, Qatar, and Thailand. So this is really important because if you see, all of them are mature economies, and they are, yes or yes, having their confidence and trust in this region that is Africa. So then, of course, let's see where we are. How is Africa today? The GDP is growing 3.9% and is projected to reach 4% by 2030. But the most important thing, the contribution of tourism to the GDP is growing as well. So it's more or less the same as the general GDP. Tourism today is contributing 3.8% to the GDP of Africa. And something that I like the most is that this is the young continent or the young region. So, of course, here when it comes to investments, it's not only private equity investments, it's not only about assuring hospitality investments, as well as about startups, it's as well to help the SMEs and to talent to grow. So 60% of this continent represents people under the age of 25. So technology and bringing the good tools and the good incentives to make the young generations create their own enterprise is there. 42% of the world's youth population is African by 2030. And last but not least, 2.5 billion people will be the total population of the region. So at the end, the talent and the potential is there. And now let's jump to what the Secretary General gave this morning to His Excellency, the President of Angola. So this is our service in UN tourism when it comes to investments. So what is an investment guideline? And this is a service that in UN tourism and the Minister Marcio tasked us since the beginning to help him to bring the proper data and to create a proper doing business plan to attract investors. So, long story short, the investment guideline is a project that is between our regional department, so thank you, Elsia, that you're here. Of course, the technical department on investments, that is Pablo, that is in the back. And then, of course, the team of the ministry or of the minister. Why? Because we need to work together to make the life easier to an investor and to make a funnel and a plan when it comes to investments. So the investment guideline is divided into 5 chapters. The economic chapter, overall, the incentives and why, what are the tangible incentives to invest in a country, the competitiveness outlook, of course, the projects where the country is moving their priorities into action, and last but not least, of course, where is tourism based in this economy. So I'm going to present you part of what we did together. So in the first one, that is the first chapter of the guideline, is the economic outlook. So Angola is growing the GDP 3% growth in 2025, is the 8th economy of the region. And of course, the growth when it comes to accommodation and hospitality is 6.8, let's say 7%. But then, this is very important for the investors. What is the tax and the legal framework and the investments incentives? So the first thing that was done in the country is that Angola created IPEX, that is the National Investment Promotion Agency. But the importance of that agency is that agency direct reports to the president. So the president is committed with tourism investments. Second point, it was created a single investment window, so it facilitates the way an investor can join and can invest in the country. There are legal guarantees when it comes to profit and repatriation mechanisms that this as well is key for an investor. So Angola created a private investment law that guarantees that 100% of foreign ownership with full repatriation of the capital. Of course, competitive tax, 25% versus 28%, that is in average in the region. And this is something really interesting where the Secretary General and Minister Marcio announced this morning. We're working, the minister worked on a new program called Simplifica Turismo. So at the end of the day is a project or a program for zero licensing measures, simplified approvals, and streamlined procedures for tourism businesses. Of course, this is like one stop in order to invest, and of course, a new Invest in Angola platform will be ready, and we will work together again. So thank you, Secretary General, thank you, Minister, because now we are tasked to create the UNT Pass together. And last but not least, of course, there are specialized investment incentives, up to 100% corporate tax reduction, up to 50% investment tax credit, up to 100% customs duty exemption. The last one is key because it's manufacturing, is how you can bring all the goods, all the amenities, everything that you need, because at the end, tourism represents more than 100 subsectors of the economy. So then, of course, more of those incentives, I'm just talking about the most important ones, but you can see these on the guideline. Now, the third chapter is the investment outlook, and this is key. Angola has grew 60% when it comes to non-oil investments. So this is a key message because at the end, the economy, yes or yes, and the government, yes or yes, has a commitment to diversify the economy through tourism. Who is investing so far? In Angola, the US, the UAE, and Singapore. They are the top 3 investors in the country. And this is something that we want, as UN Tourism, to bring to your attention. There are successful cases. There are a lot. But if I could mention 3, I would say the first one, to me, is the Angola Sovereign Wealth Fund investing in tourism. This is new, and this is an example for the world, because at the end, when you analyze sovereign funds, there are just a few that take the risk on investing in tourism. And Angola did it in partnership with Marriott as a sign of trust, as a sign of seriousness. Then, of course, the international hotel operators, so 449 million euros committed to tourism, infrastructure, including a priority destination as Cabo Ledo, and last but not least, all of you who came from abroad experienced the new tourism infrastructure. So the new airport was open with more than $3.8 billion invested. So at the end of the day, today, Angola represents the traffic of 50 million passengers. So if we see by the near future, the projection is that we can create here a hub. The fourth point is the tourism outlook. So the country has been growing so fast as well. So tourism shares 30% of the service exports, 1,400 hotels, and this is important for an investor, 73% is the hotel occupancy rate. So again, the potential is there. And last but not least, for the investors, the most important part of the guideline is the projects. So on the last slide, we can see, and everything it's on the guideline, the government and the ministry selected 14 bankable mega projects. When I'm talking about mega projects, it's not just a hotel, it's the whole ecosystem. It's either on a special trade zone, or it's either a strong thematic place where not only tourism is developed, but also transport, et cetera, et cetera. And those projects are ready to get investments from 6 regions of Angola. So to end the presentation, of course, improved connectivity and continued reforms are creating new opportunities for high-value tourism investments, making Angola ready to welcome them. So I end with this, that may be the most important part, that is the QR that the Secretary General gave to the President. So all the investors, we welcome you to download the investment guideline. The investment guideline is in the UN Tourism website, so you can see in a deep way all the things that Angola is offering today to make sure that this destination is growing fast. Thank you again, and Minister Marcio, Secretary General, more than committed to keep advancing on this partnership together. Thank you so much.